disbanding some kind of stereotype around African fashion, right? And by that, I mean that, when people think about African fashion, they think about Agbada, or they think about Ankara, or they think about Ashoke and all of that stuff, right? And that's not to say, of course, that brands would use that, but I think it's very important for you to subvert that narrative that that's really just what African fashion is about. Women, especially, who have been displaced through, the Boko Haram insurgency, right? So she works with women who have, sort of been internally displaced, and just sort of give them hope to say, oh, come on, there's something beyond, all of the experience. You would understand that we used to wake up to death threads. He used to wake up to, why are you emasculating men? Why are you making men wear pink? This was 10 years ago, when the conversations about, toxic masculinity and misogyny was, sort of still very rampant. But then there were designers who was sort of pushing to change the narrative beyond toxic masculinity to say a model with some kind of disability worked. So basically, people with disabilities now are starting to speak up. We wear your clothes to want to also be on the runway. Skin uniquenesses get to show up. So you get to see people with vitiligo, people with albinism, and all of that stuff. That part of that. Really, fashion really just is beyond clothes. It's more for, as far as I know, you can use it to have very, very deep conversations. Bring to fore experiences that people can't see.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Lost Negotiations, a podcast covering topics concerning Africans in Africa and out of Africa, as well as trending topic and challenges facing Africans. I'm your host, Brother Mike. We've got a very, very special guest today. It's actually based in Nigeria. Mr. Elvis, please, can you tell our guests about yourself, please?
My name is Elvis Kachi, and I am a fashion and culture journalist. So I write about the Nigerian fashion industry and, across the African continent. I have held roles as the Nigerian editor for Euro-based magazine Vanity Team, and I have had a weekend column with local newspaper Business in Nigeria. I am currently the content director for Marmalade Collective, which is a fast-growing UK-based media company. And I have had my pieces across platforms like BBC, OK Africa, Essence Magazine, Industrial Africa, Mail and Guardian, Culture Custodian, more branches, Rest of World, and a few other spaces. I have forthcoming pieces coming out with publications like Vogue Business and Guardian UK, Reuters, and a few other spaces really.
Yeah. So the Nigerian fashion industry, what's popping? What's going on, and why should we care about the Nigerian, or why should anyone really care about the Nigerian fashion industry?
So if you really looked up cities or countries which has a lot of impact when it comes to fashion industry. Across the world we have 4 basic cities, right, in the global north, or in global states, and it's New York, London, Paris, and Milan, right? So it's why there's always this heat when it comes to conversations about New York Fashion Week, or London Fashion Week, or Milan Fashion Week, or Paris Fashion Week. Do you get? And basically, it's literally what this is for Africa. Lagos, Nigeria is one of the leading scenes when it comes to conversations about the fashion industry. Right, and beyond Lagos, we have other spaces like South Africa, we have other spaces like Accra, Ghana, and then a little bit of maybe Kenya or Senegal, right? And, we have designers who have had that much impact. If you really studied fashion, you would realize that one of the pioneers of the fashion industry really did come from Nigeria, and her name is Shade Thomas Pham. She's literally one of, Nigeria's biggest designers who has had a lot of cultural impact. And then beyond that, we have other really exciting designers who have, been a part of, the Nigerian fashion scene, and are just sort of globalizing the idea of, African fashion. And they include people like Deola Sego, people like Stephen Amber, people like Larinda Silva, Jai, and a few other people like Amaka Osakwe Makio, and a few other Nigerian designers who are, really pioneering. some kind of change and just like globalizing the Nigerian fashion industry, basically. So yes, you should care because, of course, fashion is one of the basic necessities of humans, right? So it's really just like $1 billion industry. It's just something that's very important for us to like, really be involved in at the moment.
Yeah, so let's talk about the export of Nigerian fashion, because a lot of our audience is actually outside Nigeria. So I'm wondering if that's something that outside of New York, Paris, London, Milan, Nigerian fashion has been exported to. So somewhere like, say, Seattle, Washington, or maybe Edinburgh, the UK, or Sydney, Australia, places that are not necessarily known for fashion. Does Nigerian fashion artifacts get exported there, and how does that really work?
I mean, so I do not really have, obviously, I do not really work with the designers, but of course, I think that's very possible. But one thing I'm very sure of is most of the times, these brands do not only run like a D2C business model, they also run, through other platforms like e-commerce stores, social media buying and all of that stuff. So besides, running this direct-to-consumer model where you can place an order directly from the brand, there are other there are other companies there are other companies which can serve as a bridge between your brand of interest and you as the consumer, right? So for example, if you're somebody who lives in Washington and you want to buy, say, a brand, you want to buy a Thebe Magugu brand, a South African-based brand. Thebe Magugu is, one of the winners. It's the winner of from 2019 of LVMH. And I think he's stocked with platforms like The Folklore. He's stocked on Industry Africa. He's stocked on a few other e-commerce platforms, right? So that e-commerce platforms I'm talking to you now. Do you understand what I mean? So if you want to get these brands, there are companies that you can reach out to, which I've just mentioned for you. So you reach out to them and then you place an order and then they get delivered to you. Do you understand what I mean? So for example, there is Orange Culture Nigeria, who is currently stocked with Farfetch. He's currently stocked with Browns. These are, obviously brick and mortar stores and also like e-commerce platforms, right? So you can always reach out to these people and then they get delivered to you. That's if you do not obviously want to, reach out to the people directly, the designers directly, or maybe they do not ship to your
area,
state, or your country exactly. So like these people you can reach out to them and then they'll get it delivered to you. That's really how the business model works, I think.
Yeah, no, that's well stated. The other comment or question I should say that I have is the fact that in order, like outside those major metropolises that you're talking about, this is outside of that, most Nigerians don't necessarily, I want to say this carefully, they don't necessarily dress to go to work because they have, say, odd jobs. The Nigerian diaspora community outside of those big cities, they have to pay their bills. So occasionally, maybe Sunday for church, or maybe at a Saturday Owambe joint, occasionally they'll get to dress. And here, a lot of times the weather is very, the weather can be cold. So you don't really have that tropical climate that you have in Lagos or Abuja year round. So have you guys been able to find a way around that? Because that impacts the number of people that dresses in African way. On top of that is the fact that people don't really care much for Nigerian African dressing in the Western society outside of those events or times where there are events. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are. How do you address that, and how have you guys been able to overcome that?
So do you mean how we Nigerians here do not like buy from made Nigerian products?
My question is basically, in order to help the Nigerian ecosystem, fashion ecosystem, there are certain things that need to be in place. We need to have good weather year round, which Nigeria does have, fortunately, but most parts of the Western Hemisphere does not. They do not have such a good weather year round. Some parts that are cold, 4, 5, 6 months of the year, it's cold, it's freezing. You can't really dress with a nice, like Nigerian dress to be going to work Monday through Friday when it's freezing. Simply stating, like, how have you guys been able to ride around that, or have been able to combat that kind of challenge to make sure that people can dress Nigerian year round? On top of that is the fact that in the West, most people don't really, you just dress like, the Western attire. You don't dress like an African all the way year round. Because people don't really recognize it. And if you're always in the office environment, you're not going to wear an agbada to work like for casual Friday in the middle of December when there's snow out on the ground. So how have you guys been able to combat that, or how have you been able to write around that?
So basically, one of the reasons why I, sort of like delved into fashion journalism is disbanding some kind of stereotype around African fashion, right? And by that, I mean that, when people think about African fashion, they think about Agbada, or they think about Ankara, or they think about Ashoke and all of that stuff, right? And that's not to say, of course, that brands would use that, but I think it's very important for you to subvert that narrative that that's really just what African fashion is about, right? There are African fashion designers who basically focus on ready-to-wear. I mean, think Maya Tafo. Maya Tafo literally just focuses on, bespoke suits and, bridals, right? Think people like Dijan Kola, who, does really, really amazing suitwear. So really does really amazing ready-to-wear line. I have worked with brands like Imadedoso who would, construct something really amazing for you, for your workwear, right? There are a number of designers who basically what they do is they use cashmere, they use actual cotton, to create things that are very exciting for you that you can actually really wear to work. Think designers like Style Tempo, Ojo Konko of Style Tempo, who is, really pushing, ready to wear line. Do you understand what I mean? So of course, something that I really also want people to understand is brands have their, they have their market. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. So somebody like Orange Culture Nigeria now is definitely going to be focusing so much more on androgynous clothing, right? People like Diola Sego is going to be focusing more on, Ashoke wears that are, very bespoke and has this unique taste to it. Even Diola Sego's children, Clan Ready to Wear, has like this really, really amazing collections that they release every time, and it focuses so much ready to wear. So they're like work wears, they're wears that you can wear anywhere. I mean, if you're looking for brands, Nigerian brands now who would do resort wear for you, then you should be thinking people like Andre Yama, who would do, this really nice resort wear, or just to have like this amazing swimwear line. Do you get what I mean? So African fashion really doesn't just focus on, Agbada or Ashoke or whatever. So Nigerian designers or African designers basically doesn't focus on Ankara or Agbada or whatever. They also really do bespoke clothes, ready to wear. They import fabrics all the way from Turkey or Vietnam, and then they produce and send it back out. That's so if they're like Nigerians or Africans in diaspora who are really interested in getting all of these products, there are ways to get them. The African fashion industry has blossomed, trust me.
Yeah,
you can find what you want.
Great answer. I think what you're saying is that African fashion is not necessarily you're trying to delineate between the African fashion and the traditional.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a new wave, like newer generation. They don't. The African fashion is not limited to the Ashoke and the Agbada and traditional. Yeah. But they can use the material, and I think you mentioned and use that. I mean,
they're designers.
Yeah, designers. Yeah. Wow, very, 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 very good. Very good. Then I thought a lot of those materials, they are imported. A lot of the alleged air quotes, a lot of our traditional dresses that we use for our African dress, most of them are imported from places like Turkey, Ankara, like all these different parts of the world. Is there anything that Nigeria is doing to produce some of those locally instead of importing 99.99% of them?
Yeah, I mean, I of course. So we obviously have designers who try to create their own fabrics and just do something as exciting. For example, designers that I mentioned like Kenneth Ize or Emi Casbit, they create their own fabrics, their locally made fabrics, and we call these designers sustainable designers, which is really what the African fashion industry is pushing for right now. More locally made product that can, push for some kind of circular economy whilst also preserving, traditional crafts and stuff. So yes, we have designers. Abiola Olushola does that. She literally have to travel all the way to, I think, Abeokuta or Osun State to, work with artisans. And then most of the times, these designers have to bring them back to Lagos, and then they work and then they go back. We have brands like This Is Us, who focuses so much on the use of indigo dye, trying to preserve some kind of the, traditional craft. We actually have a lot of, excited Nigerian designers who are just pushing for the production of locally made fabrics here. But then, they're also ready to wear brands, which it can be hard for them to source the fabrics here because, most of the times the production is not really favorable. Obviously, Nigeria has, a lot of ways to go when it comes to the use of amenities and all of that stuff. So it just makes sense for them to import most of the fabrics from places like Turkey or Vietnam or Indonesia, just to bring them here and then do all of the production and then send it back and all of that stuff. But as far as traditional fabrics go, we have a number of designers who are really pushing for that. I mean, we now have surface print designers, right? We have people like Adebukola Adetona of Ribs Pattern Bang. We have a number of exciting surface designers whom you can reach out to, and then you give them, you work with them, consultations and all that stuff, and you create some kind of patterns or some kind of fabrics that you think is going to work with your brand ethos or whatever collection you're looking to release at the time. For somebody like that, we have Sisiano, we have Orange Culture, we have Kite Collective, and a few other designers who have worked it hard, to push for, the collections, like whatever it is they're looking to release at the time.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think that's a good answer. Just to follow up to that, how is the current economic situation, how is that impacting the fashion industry? Like, do Nigerians still really like to party and still spend a lot on their looks despite the economic recession going on in the country right now?
I mean, if anything, people here in Lagos love to party. Like, there's a party every other week. There's a party every other day, right? So yes, of course, the fashion is really impacting, and I'm not gonna lie, it can be slow most times, especially because Nigeria is a developing country, and as much as clothing is important, there are just some things that people might not necessarily pay much attention to. It's just something that people might not necessarily pay much attention to because obviously they might want to put food in their stomach or they might want to drink water and stuff. But as far as the economic situation goes, it's improving by the day. Usually there are Nigerian designers who really just target the market outside of the country, and because most of the times the goods can be priced out $200, $300, and even as far as $1,000. Right, which can be very hard for Nigerians living in Nigeria to afford. But beyond that, there are also, consumers who are really interested in that. I mean, you can be here in Nigeria and also be getting $3,000 per month. So you can, be able to afford something like that. But also beyond that, there are other, up and coming designers who are, trying to fill that kind of gap. Just make clothing more affordable for us. It's growing. It's really growing. It's growing. It can be slow. It can look like it's slow, but it's really growing, and it's really interesting to see.
Yeah. So people still dress regardless of the economic situation.
Yeah. People are definitely going to dress. Yes, people still dress.
Well, that's fascinating. I think one thing you and I talked about before we went on air was about like social justice and how does the fashion industry, how does that impact social justice? I'm wondering what you have to say about that. How do you guys interweave the two of them?
Right. So beyond, like I said earlier, beyond profiling designers and, other young creatives who are, trying to do something and just sort of like, change the ecosystem of the industries that they find themselves. My work also falls into the interface between, the fashion industry and other conversations, that include, stuff like the politicization or queerness or, misogyny, patriarchy, toxic masculinity and stuff. But, to answer your question, it's the fashion industry, isn't, for most designers, isn't really just, about dressing, right? It's about having a conversation beyond what you look like when you wear these clothes, right? My second piece for Essence Magazine had me discussing with Nigerian designers who, have used their work as some kind of politicization. So, for example, I spoke with Nkwo Onwuka, who is like one of Nigeria's pioneering sustainable designers. Nkwo has such a brilliant mind. She has such an amazing mind, and she's like, really, really sweet. And so basically what she does is she can take like, dead stock fabric, and then she'll just like create collections from that, create something very new and just like, very innovative and invent something new from that. And when I discussed with her, she had like this textile that she invented, which you have to, they're fabrics, and then you have to, you unweave these fabrics, and then you begin to weave them through the Nigerian traditional processes, right? And she called it Dakala cloth. You can definitely check it out, DAKALACLOTH, Dakala cloth. I'm saying this because when I spoke with her, she told me that, most of the times the people that she had worked with are, people, women especially, who have been displaced through, the Boko Haram insurgency. Right, so she works with like women who have, sort of like been internally displaced, and just sort of like give them hope to say, oh, come on, like there's something beyond, all of the experiences. Maybe the fact that your husband's apparently the head of the house in quotes, is not that here. Of course, there's a reason for it. Like, push on, that's skills that you can learn. Come and work with me. You're gonna get fair wage and all of that stuff. Right, so that's one of the designers who is doing something. And obviously we have Adebayo Kelawal for Culture Nigeria, who I remember, I think the brand is 11 years old now. And when you read Bayo's story and how he started, you would understand that Bayo used to wake up to death threads. He used to wake up to, bad comments. Why are you emasculating men? Why are you making men wear pink? This was like, 10 years ago, when the conversations about, toxic masculinity and misogyny was, sort of like still very rampant. But then there were designers who was sort of like, pushing to change the narrative beyond toxic masculinity to say, of course, men should be able to wear, if they want to wear boot-cut pants, they should be able to wear it. If they want to wear pink, they can't wear it, right? These are like designers who have sort of like politicized their brands. And then even beyond that, we have non-binary designer Samsi Adejo of Lagos Space Program, who was a semi-finalist for the LVMH award. I've been saying LVMH. For those who don't know, LVMH is like, one of the biggest awards that, a designer could ever do. Yeah, it's a really good one. So Thompson is a non-binary Nigerian designer who, uses their work to push for, the conversations about queerness in very conservative spaces like Nigeria, right? We do have a number of exciting designers who have politicized their brands. For example, during Lagos Fashion Week last year, we saw when Bayo, used this glitter thing on the eyes of the models. It looked like tears, right? And then when you asked Bayo what really inspired it, he said that, because I conversed with him, and he said that, it was just about how, the collection really was just inspired by, the NSAS protest from 2020, and, how Nigerians really fought and then cried, and we did all of that stuff. So he just sort of thought to, interface that experience with the collection. And so far as I know, Bayo is the collection too from that designer is one of the collections where a model with some kind of disability walked. So basically, people with disabilities now are starting to speak up. We wear your clothes to want to also be on the runway. Bayo was one of the people who pushed for, I think his name is Promise. He works with LED model management. He had one of his arm amputated or something like that. It's a growth condition. Yeah, so the model was one of the people who really walked, and even beyond that, that brand was one of the brands which brought the model to fore. So Promise is signed to LED, and then LED is also like a model management where people with skin uniquenesses get to show up. So you get to see people with vitiligo, people with albinism, and all of that stuff. That part of that. Really, fashion really just is beyond clothes. It's more for, as far as I know, you can use it to have very, very deep conversations. Bring to fore experiences that people can see. Yeah, exactly.
Express yourself. Actually, I also know that with Unko, what we were just talking about, the lady we're talking about, Unko right? She also does a lot of recycling, whereby she goes to different parts of Nigeria and they give her garments that might not be like otherwise used, and she kind of bring life to it. She sewed jeans from interesting materials in different parts, showing the different cultural parts of the country. The question I want to ask you as we wrap down this conversation is about Pretty Mike. I saw something last year about Pretty Mike attending Funny Bone's wedding in grand style. Basically, he had ladies dressed in red pants and bras carrying a cross. So if you guys don't know, Pretty Mike is one of these guys who is very, very fashionistic and very outspoken in terms of his design and how he rolls. But some people have complained about him using women and objectifying them. I don't know if that's something that maybe is very common, or if you've kind of looked into the situation with Pretty Mike as one of the celebs that basically enters in grand style, particularly with his entourage, how he goes about. He did one again that he has 6 girls following. He had 6 girls following him, like they had horns. So on Instagram you can follow him up. I think his handle is Pretty Mike official or something like that. But what's your Pretty Mike of Lagos? That's his handle, and he he uses women and they dress interestingly just to make an entrance. So what's your take on that? I mean, is that part of what you define as the 21st century fashion?
Different strokes for different folks, to be honest. So if something works for you, then by all means go ahead. Quite frankly, I've realized that there are some conversations I like to stay away from, because to be honest, you really do not have to have like an opinion about something. But what I will say is, when I had a conversation for Quartz Africa about the plus size fashion industry, I remember when I spoke with one of the designers, Rain Lagos, REIG. And how did they spell Rain again? Rain Lagos. And she said to me that because she's a plus size designer and she focuses on creating apparels, clothing for plus size people. And then one of the things she said is, most of the times people allow themselves to be exploited in that sense. When she said, she was like, she has seen skits where plus size women, were objectified or sexualized, and that didn't sit well with her. But then, as much as she wants to, focus so much on the meaning of these skits and the men who are objectifying women or sexualizing women, she's also definitely going to focus on women too who allow themselves to be objectified. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So for example, if someone comes on to you and say, "Oh, I want you to do this," and during that skit, you're going to I'm going to feel disgusted by you, and then go on to your slimmer contemporary. If you say no to that, then it's not going to happen, right? But then if you do that and want to pass that kind of message, then it's going to happen. Do you understand what I mean? So if there is a Lagos socialite who is, bringing in 6 women, 10 women, 20 women, they're objectified, it's their fault as much as it's his fault. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, if you allow yourself to be objectified or sexualized like that, then you allowed yourself to have that kind of experience.
Yeah, no, perfect. So I think what I'm taking away from that is that people are entitled to define whatever fashion trends they want to. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm dropping is, if this is working for you, then by all means go ahead. But
that's still fashion, though. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, like, do not let it be premised on, expectation. That's what I'm saying. But if you are exploiting people who are giving you 100% consent, then I don't know what to say about that.
Okay. No, very well. As we kind of wind down, do you have any final thoughts regarding what you think about fashion for Nigerians outside Nigeria? And yeah, even for those in Nigeria, kind of like your remarks, closing remarks, if you would.
I think what I would say is, the Nigerian fashion industry, African fashion industry actually is very immersive. It's very exciting. It's really great to see, our designers who are subverted some kind of stereotype around it. Personally, I have a bias against designers who even want to use Ankara because I feel like there's just, too much conversation about it. We are so tied to it that, the media has sort of like picked it up. We have a number of exciting designers who use chiffon to make something so good for you. You'd wonder where this came from. Right. So, of course, the Nigerian fashion industry or the African fashion industry continues to blossom, continues to grow. It's exciting to see our designers, push for that. It's exciting to see them be finalists in awards like Woolmark or, LVMH or, even be on BOF 500 or even be, amongst the BFC, the British Fashion Council. It's just really interesting. But something I also want us to understand is, when it comes to African fashion or, fashion generally, people just really look at designers. So people just want to be designers. But there are, in fact, other aspects or other sectors in fashion that you can explore. Hell, I started off as a designer. Until COVID happened, I wasn't even, doing fashion journalism. I did own a brand. So I learned about how to design. I learned about pattern drafting. I learned about fashion illustration, all from very different fashion schools or fashion houses, as we'll put it here. Right. But then COVID happened and I found out that I have interest in journalism more than I do with, designing. So I moved on to that. So as much as it's very interesting for you to explore your skills, there are other things you can do in the industry. You honestly do not need to be a designer. You do not need to, be creating collections. You can do journalism. You can do, photography. You can do styling. You can even work as an accounts person in fashion. You can be an apparel person. You can create surface prints. There's so much you can explore in the industry. It's just that design is just, one of the gateways into the fashion industry when there are in fact a number of opportunities a person can explore in the industry. So yeah, that's my job. Just as much as you're exploring your skills, ensure that you are not being tied down to one of the most prominent gateways. Ensure that you're exploring beyond design. Ensure that you're pushing, into other things that might work for you or you would find interesting.
So don't be siloed into one.
Yes, do not be siloed into exactly.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. So really, again, really want to appreciate your time, Elvis. Thanks for being here. That does it for us, guys. We're really excited to have Elvis. Before we go, can you tell us how they can find you, or follow you, or your social media handle?
Yeah, great. So my Instagram is Elvis Kachi, ELVISKACHI, no underscore, no full stop, no nothing, Elvis Kachi. But if you honestly need more conversations from me about the African fashion industry, then I would definitely recommend that you join my LinkedIn. I think I have about 15,000 connections at the moment, 15,000 plus connections at the moment. And my LinkedIn is Elvis Onyedikachi Kawedo. So Elvis, my middle name, Onyedikachi Kawedo, my surname Kawedo, Elvis Onyedikachi Kawedo. I definitely recommend that you check that. Give me a connection request. I'm definitely gonna, reach out.
So do you write a lot on LinkedIn? Is that kind of why?
Yeah, definitely. I actually do post a lot of things.
Okay. Very well. I will be sure to check it out personally. I found it very educative and actually equally interesting, just to understand the nuances of African fashion and also the depth of kind of just so much knowledge and so much to learn. And also as someone who lives here in the West, I think there are many ways to look at African fashion, and I think you've kind of educated me in that sense, because I've always been one that thought, well, if it's winter, how am I going to dress as an African and keep true to who I am, my the originality, the African uniqueness. But I think there are other ways to explore that, and you have been able to shed more light to that. So thank you so much for that. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here. That's all the time we have today. Until next time, okay, thanks, Elvis, and bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.